For about the last 3 years, I've been on a personal journey, soul searching, character building, and trying to improve in areas of my life that I still feel need work. Some people talk about synchronicity and how you can receive the right message in your life when it's needed the most, or how a complete stranger can intercept your journey to share a new and refreshing way of looking at life. This is where I'm at. Last week, my brother gave me a heads up on a channel called My Frequencies, and I decided to check it out. This was how my paths crossed with Jason, a guy roughly the same age as myself and who appeared to have many of the same outlooks on society. However, there was one notable difference. Jason has made a conscious decision to live permanently in the woods, separating himself from many of the creature comforts that we all take for granted. After seeing this, I was completely sold, and I just knew that I needed to talk with him. I urge everybody to go check out Jason's channel and show your support. Now please sit back, relax, and listen as we both talk candidly about anything and everything.
So do you want to just talk a little bit about yourself to start with or anything like that, or do you want to jump straight in?
I don't know, man. How do I explain myself? Just come and watch the channel. That's the answer.
I guess the first thing that I want to ask you, which intrigued me when I started watching your videos, was I sat there and I watched and I started thinking, I wonder what the defining moment was in your life. Like, at what point did you think enough's enough? This is it now. I'm just going to cut back and go to the very basics to start again. What was that defining moment in your life?
I don't think I ever hit like a really dramatic point, but it was a slow build up. Rather than that, I think maybe what really made me start taking radical action, as they say, was getting ill. So I had a lot of changes that I felt I needed to make in my life. This is going way back when I was almost 28 years old. So what's that? That's like about 7 years ago, I think. You know, I wanted to quit smoking. That was like the biggest thing that was bothering me at the time. But there were just many things that I wanted to rein in and change. But I felt too weak to do it. But once I had an autoimmune condition, which they kind of come out of nowhere. You go to the doctor, they can't really explain anything about it. So you're like, holy shit. And when you go online and start reading up about it, you find that the only way people ever get any kind of relief from these things, it's not about treatments and therapies, it's about the lifestyle changes you make and the sort of psychological changes that you can make.
So when you say you was ill, what was, if you don't mind me asking, what was it that you were suffering with?
Doctors call it psoriasis. It's just the autoimmune response in the skin. So
was you kind of one of these people that would choose like the unethical route? So instead of medications, would you try to self-help? There's lots of herbs and remedies for these things these days, isn't there? Was you with like the kind of person that would go that route rather than taking medication straight away, or?
No, back then I was completely asleep. I continued smoking, I continued drinking, I continued doing all the things that I thought were quote unquote wrong for me to be doing, things that I didn't want to do anymore. And I just took the medicine because I was still in that paradigm of you're sick, you go to the doctor will make you better. Even though the doctors straight away, they will tell you there's no cure for this, all we can do is moderate the symptoms.
I can relate to that as well. My brother, he suffers with eczema really bad all his life. And so the cure that he was given, or if you want to call it a cure, I suppose there's really such thing as a cure. But the quick fix was steroid cream. And
yeah, exactly.
for years and years he just applied steroid cream and it would fix it for a short while and then he'd get the eczema back, but it'd come back worse. And I think he stumbled across a group on Facebook that was about steroid withdrawal. I'm not sure if you've heard of that.
Yeah. Oh yeah, they call it rebound symptoms.
Yeah, and he went through hell for months trying to get rid of this eczema, doing the steroid withdrawal. His skin started to flake off dramatically. He looked worse for a long time before he looked better. At the end of it all, he came back and his skin has never looked better.
Well, you see, the medical system can't treat the underlying cause. They look at it and they go, okay, what is the problem? It's inflammation in the skin. So they have to produce an equal and opposite response in order to try and suppress that. That's what they do. And it's not really a failure of medicine. That's what medicine does, you know. Your body's telling you something, right? And we're just telling it, I haven't got time for this now. I don't want to deal with this problem right now. So we kind of suppress it. Or we turn the TV on or something. We do something to take our mind away from it.
What has been your most noticeable difference, like the biggest change in yourself?
I mean, superficially speaking, I used to only be interested in motorcycles and chasing women. It was typical sort of 20-year-old, mid-20s male type behaviour. And I was totally cool with that. That's what I thought life was about. So that's all gone now. Now I'm like, I'd rather be sort of single and a monk on a mountaintop rather than, chasing women.
And do you feel that you still gain equally as much happiness through your new mindset than chasing the women and the bikes and everything else that offered before in the previous life?
Do you know what? I would say yes, on balance, yes, because how it is when you're in that unconscious state is that you're always chasing the peaks, aren't you? You're always going. So when you're doing well, when you're getting laid, when your motorbike's running well, you've got a nice bike, it's great. And then there's the troughs when you get dumped or you have an accident or you get an expensive bill or something. So to kind of grow beyond the peaks and the troughs, and to not be stuck in that cycle, I think is the benefit.
I would always have like Amazon wish lists set up, and I'd tell myself, if I get, this is all I need. If I just buy this, then this is all I need. I won't need anything else now. I just need this to finish my camp set off, like for all my camping gear and whatever else. And then you'd buy that, and there'd be something else, and there'd be something else. And no matter how many times I said this to myself, that wish list never disappeared. It was always there. I always wanted something more, and I just thought, at what point does this end? Like, when are you actually going to be happy with what you've got already and just stop adding things to these lists that you don't generally need?
Yeah. This is like a perpetual human issue, right? This is what, do you know The Power of Now, a book by...
I do, yeah. I've actually got it on my bookshelf behind me, yeah.
Right, I've got that. I carry it with me all the time in my backpack, so if I'm ever stuck waiting for something, that really means pull the book out, it's time to learn something, do you know what I mean? And it's just there, constant reference, right? But, do you know that Bruce Parry guy, right? He did a series of documentaries for the BBC where he would go to remote tribes in the jungle in Africa and South America. He'd integrate with the tribe and he'd hunt with them and all that kind of stuff. And the tribes in South America, they had exactly the same problem that we have in the West. Even though they were living very primitively, very close to nature, they had regrets about the past and they had fears for the future. You think their life is so simple that they'd be free of our troubles, but they're not. It's just on a different level. So I would extrapolate that even primitive man still had that. It's just the mind. It's just something about the human mind that always wants more, like you say, with the wish list and wanting a better camping setup. That's just something and the way to even begin to free ourselves from it, because it's kind of a prison in our own mind. The way to become free of it is to just become aware of it. And every time it rears its ugly head, if you can become aware of it, you completely disempower it, depower it. Tolly calls it the ego. Every time you catch it in operation and you depower it, you're sort of becoming stronger and it's becoming weaker.
It's such a nice way to live, because you do get a sense of freedom once you realise that, look, if this carries on, I'm never going to be happy, ever. So I think social media as well has a lot to answer for. Especially this word influencer. This is a big thing now that was, maybe you go back 10, 15 years, was never a thing, but everybody's mad on being an influencer now, and I think these people don't actually live these lives. It's not realistic.
Yeah. I mean, there's no arguing with that. I think even those people would have to recognise that. I don't know.
So when you started your journey into becoming awakened, let's say, did you notice any differences with friends and family, and how did you deal with that?
It's still ongoing, right? The way I found it is I was starting to learn all this new information. It was like I wasn't me anymore, and I began to lose that feeling of it's like committing social suicide when you start talking about certain subjects, right? And then you become aware that people are drifting away from you. I found it over the past 7 years, really, that this process has been ongoing. It started with just acquaintances, then it goes to people you've known for quite a long time, and it gets closer and closer, and it gets to family members. And the way I think of it, I think that everything that we're experiencing externally is a reflection of what we're experiencing internally. So the deeper you go on your journey into yourself, to finding your true self, it's manifesting externally. So, I used to go onto Facebook and I'd have a dozen messages, let's say, from just random people that I had ongoing conversations with, just chatting shit, meaningless bullshit. And now when I go on Facebook, I might have 1 or 2 messages with people I really care about, I have a really strong connection with, and we're sharing really important information. It's mostly just my girlfriend. So you could look at that and say, oh, this is a lonely person. But the way I look at it, it's like I've just really pared everything down to the most meaningful and important relationships. And you could say it's kind of sad that you used to have all these different friends, you were always out and about, but I don't see it that way.
So do you practice things like astral projection? Do you do a lot of inward work, like you just mentioned there? Everything that we do inside is a projection of what happens outside.
I found this Chinese guy called Mantak Chia, and back in the 80s he collected a lot of knowledge from Taoism, because he's Chinese, right? So he got all these Taoist ideas about cultivating qi, the male. I mean, qi's like the universal energy, right? It just means breath, I think. But he was specifically speaking to males and how you're always expending your seed in the Western culture. Through that book, I learnt breathing exercises, and because I was on the NoFap as well for months, for many months, I had all this extra energy, and I feel that was the time when the most healing took place, mentally and physically, doing these exercises.
Do you live your life quite minimalistically as well then?
I'm not hardcore on it, but I don't have a lot of stuff. There's only so much you can carry on a bike. You know, I live in a shed in the woods. There's not a lot of stuff.
Are you permanently in the shed now then? Are you living there all year round, or?
I live there, I think I average about 5 to 6 days a week in there. You know, I'm at my parents' place now. They don't live too far away. And this is where I come to do my laundry. Obviously I haven't got a washing machine or anything in there. I'm completely off grid.
That must be such a great sense of freedom. I don't know if you've gone back to any of my older videos, the very first few videos that we uploaded. We started to build a bushcraft base in the woods, and we camped out there. We never lived there permanently or anything like that. But as you've said in your videos, the more you go back to these places and you add a little something here, a little something there, it becomes home slowly, and that was a great feeling for me. Like, we'd add a log shed to keep the logs dry, and then we'd add like a shelter and a bed and a wall behind the fire to keep the heat in, and it's an amazing feeling of like freedom, just to be able to disappear from everything, get on your bike and cycle to the woods and stay there.
Yeah. You can't recommend it enough until you've actually experienced it. I never would have imagined how it felt. It really does feel like you've slipped out through the fence of the farm, so to speak, and you have gone feral somehow from the human farm. And this is why bushcraft is so, it's exploded, hasn't it? And the off-grid thing has exploded. You've got, it's like Bear Grylls, and who's the other guy?
Ray Mears.
Ray Mears, right. There's something inside us that's like looking around at the modern surroundings and thinking there's something missing.
I have a lot of problems sleeping at the minute. My sleep pattern is all over the place. I'm up at 3 in the morning, and then I'll go back and cat nap for an hour, then I'm back up at 5, and it goes on like this. Okay. And I think that my phone just, you may be able to relate. I just lay there and I hopelessly scroll. I'm not actually doing anything. I'm just flicking through things and looking at stuff that doesn't interest me. And it gets to a point where you think, what am I actually doing? I should be sleeping. I can't be doing this anymore.
Right, you're trying to fill a hole. Again, that's all addiction is. It's just trying to fill a hole. It's addictive behaviour. It's classic addictive behaviour. You know, this is where people come along and say, oh, that's the hole where you need to fill that hole with Jesus or God or something. I mean, it needs to be something, and it's always going to be something that can't be found on a smartphone, can't be found on the internet. It is something ethereal. It is something, dare I say it, spiritual. It's something that we find out there in the woods. I don't know. You can't describe it with words.
So, like humanity, let's talk about civilization right now. Like, what do you think the biggest number one problem we're facing? Is it global warming? Is it famine? What do you think is a big factor at the minute with the way humans are living their lives?
It's a simple answer. It's unconsciousness. That is it. Because all of the problems we're facing, we easily have collectively, we easily have the man and the woman power to go out and do the work that needs to be done. We easily have the resources. I don't buy into this idea that there's not enough food to go around. We can easily, if we would, it's the distribution, it's the supply chains, it's the way that we farm that's wrong. It's not that there's not enough land. We don't need GMO to come in and increase the yield. We've easily got enough food. But it's all of the problems that seem insurmountable are only insurmountable when approached from this level of consciousness that we're currently at. All right, there's a famous quote which is, "You can't solve a problem with the same level of consciousness which created it." And as soon as we just level ourselves up just a little bit, these old problems will just melt away. So we stop trying to fight cancer like this, and we come at it from a different angle with a different level of awareness, and we can just eradicate that seemingly insurmountable problem. And that's on a personal level and a planetary level as well. It's
potentially back in the past we was a lot smarter than we are now, and our part of our brain or our unconscious has been locked away for some reason. Do you think that at some point in history we maybe could tap into some of that unconscious that we can't now?
Yeah, we're suppressed somehow. We're definitely, our what mental capacity we have is definitely funneled by schooling and media into just certain limited aspects of what the human mind is truly capable of.
I've never really had much interest or much belief in the school system at all. Like, if you go there, you're kind of a robot, you're a sponge. You go in there, somebody's telling you this is how this was, this is why this was done.
Yeah, 100% on your wavelength, man. There's something that's just not right about it, but it's just the way the game is. It's just the way it is. It's rigged. I mean, for those of us who are waking up, it's not the fact that we were born and then we were sort of enslaved. It's like, this is the experience we signed up for. We were supposed to come in with no knowledge of what's going on outside of this reality, right? And then at some point we've woken up. It's almost like a contract, right? Like it was always programmed into it. A lot of people talk about a simulation theory, and the simulation just keeps repeating, right? You die, you're born again, you repeat, you come back into the simulation. But some people, for whatever reason, we're now waking up and realizing that nothing is as it seems, and we're kind of pushing back a little bit. Yeah. There's a certain truth to the idea that humans are just animals at our core, that we're just running on these basic programs. But we are so much more than animals. What we actually are is we're something which exists on a continuum between animals and literally divine beings. We're somewhere on that continuum, and there's no reason why we can't move up and down it, at least in our conscious awareness. I'm not literally talking about physical bodies. The physical body is what it is, but our awareness. So we can completely transcend this stuff.
So you tried to be, or you might still be a vegan, from what I've gathered from your videos. How did that go for you? Was it a struggle? Did you stop, and what did you stop for?
It was an incredibly beautiful thing to be vegan. For 2 years, I just felt better and better and stronger and clearer in my thinking, and just how old was I then? Must have been 29, 30. But then it's got to be said that I also quit smoking, quit drinking, and started cycling at this time. So there was just a whole lot of positive change taking place. Having been vegan for 3.5 years, and I was what you call a card-carrying vegan. I would preach it when I felt the time was right. And then having now been ex-vegan for must be about a year, I would say that it's not actually important to eat a certain way. It's what really matters when it comes down to how you feel emotionally and spiritually about it, and how it affects you physically in your body, is eating in alignment for where you are. If you know something and you don't act on it, the negative consequence of not acting on it is magnified. Okay, so when they say ignorance is bliss, there's a certain truth to that. Like, for example, if you don't know about the dark energy which is consumed within, which is present within animal products, right, where they've been abused in factory farming and stuff, you don't know the truth about that. It's not damaging you that much. Once you learn about it, to continue doing it, that creates a conflict in you, that you're aware.
If somebody is negative towards you, how do you deal with that? Do you look at that as in, if I respond, it's my problem? Or do you think this person's just been a dick? Like, how...
You mean if someone's rude to you?
Yeah, like, if someone's rude to you and you respond, do you think, actually, it's me that's got the issue because I responded?
All right, so the main way that I experience that is on the road, right? When people are on the road together, because most people are behind a screen, it's a very passive aggressive thing, isn't it? You flash your lights, you honk your horn, but then you usually the person you're pissed off at, you're driving the other way at like a combined speed of almost 100 miles an hour, so you never see that person again. And that's what we do. You're just constantly passive aggressively bashing everyone around you. So I don't know, direct. If it was a direct conflict, I'm trying to even think of a time that's happened. We go out of our way to avoid direct conflict, don't we? But the passive aggressive side is strong, especially in the motorist. And as a cyclist, I attract a lot of that.
So you seem like a really chilled guy. Like there's not really much that I can imagine ticks you off. But is there anything that really pisses you off at all, and how do you normally deal with that?
For sure, man. I'm a mess a lot of the
Really?
time.
I can't imagine that.
Yeah.
Like I honestly can't imagine that.
I think if you make waking up and freeing yourself sort of something you want to do, like a goal you have in your life, then you're going to have to face the exact opposite of that, right? You're going to have to face it and come to understand it. So I spend a lot of time where I just become aware of the stream of thinking, right? And that awareness is consciousness. That's a higher consciousness that's come in, and it's recognized that there's a stream of thinking, number one. Secondly, it's recognized that that stream of thinking is not you. Okay, it's not something you're consciously doing, it's just there running. The most basic way to understand it is like is if you stub your toe, that hurts, but then you get angry at the piece of furniture that's hurt your foot, or you get angry at yourself for having stubbed your toe, and that adds insult to the injury, right? And it's like, that's a quote from Buddhism, so it's been around for like 5,000 years. It's like if you get shot with an arrow, stop looking around for the bastard who just shot you with an arrow, pull the fucking arrow out. Do you know what I mean?
That is so good. It's so true as well. So do you toy much with crystals, magic mushrooms, anything like that that can take you to a higher vibration or dimension to that?
When you get ill, when you get an autoimmune thing, right, and you've got visible symptoms, especially when it's visible symptoms, you get people will be recommending this, that, and the other to you all the time, right? Just the more people you meet, the more suggestions you get. And here's the thing: if you're saying like you need to rub coconut oil on it, it is not a lack of coconut oil which is causing the condition, right? It's not the lack of a presence of a rose quartz crystal at my bedside when I sleep that is causing the condition. Now, I believe that all of these things work, all of these different therapies, all of these different healing modalities, they all work for different people at different times. But the reason they work is because the person believes they work, and it taps into what power they really have within them. But the reason they work is because the person believes they work. And it taps into what power they really have within them. What power they really have within them. There's a certain truth to the idea that humans are just animals at our core, that we're just running on these basic programs. But we are so much more than animals. What we actually are is we're something which exists on a continuum between animals and literally divine beings. We're somewhere on that continuum. You know, this is where people come along and say, oh, that's the whole way, you need to fill that hole with Jesus or God or something. I mean, it needs to be something, and it's always going to be something that can't be found on a smartphone, can't be found on the internet. It is something ethereal, it is something, dare I say it, spiritual. It's something that we find out there in the woods. I don't know, you can't describe it with words. You think their life is so simple that they'd be free of our troubles, but they're not. It's just on a different level. So I would extrapolate that even primitive man still had that. It's just the mind. It's just something about the human mind that always wants more. I think if you make waking up and freeing yourself sort of something you want to do, like a goal you have in your life, then you're going to have to face the exact opposite of that, right? You're going to have to face it and come to understand it.